Before we begin, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. If you love stories about justice, resilience, and unexpected heroes, make sure to hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more incredible tales. Your support helps us bring these powerful stories to the world. Now, let's get into it. The November wind cut through downtown Portland like a knife, carrying with it the scent of rain and fallen leaves. The Pearl District, with its upscale boutiques and trendy cafes, was bustling with the afternoon crowd, young professionals clutching their lattes, tourists snapping photos of the murals, and business people hurrying between meetings. Among them, almost invisible, sat a woman on a worn blanket near the entrance of a high-end grocery store. Her name was Catherine Wells, though the people passing by didn't know that. To them, she was just another homeless person, another part of the urban landscape they'd learned to overlook. Catherine sat with her back against the cold brick wall, a cardboard sign resting on her lap. The sign read simply, "Anything helps. God bless." Her clothes were layered, a faded green jacket over a hoodie over two shirts, all of them showing their age. Her graying hair was tucked under a knit cap, and her weathered face bore the marks of too many nights sleeping rough. What no one knew, what no one could possibly guess from looking at her, was that 18 months ago, Catherine Wells had been a different person entirely. She'd been Dr. Catherine Wells, chief of neurosurgery at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, one of the most respected surgeons on the West Coast, a woman who had saved countless lives with her steady hands and brilliant mind. But that was before everything fell apart. Catherine adjusted her position on the cold pavement, wincing as her joints protested the movement. She watched the stream of people flow past her, their eyes carefully averted, their paths curving slightly to avoid coming too close. She was used to it now, the invisibility, the careful distance people maintained. It was as if homelessness was contagious, as if acknowledging her existence might somehow threaten their own comfortable realities. A young mother approached with a stroller, her toddler pointing excitedly at the colorful mural on the building across the street. As they got closer to Catherine, the mother quickened her pace, subtly steering the stroller away. Catherine heard the little girl ask, "Mommy, why is that lady sitting on the ground?" The mother's response was quick and hushed, "Don't stare, honey. It's not polite." They hurried past, and Catherine felt a familiar ache in her chest, not from the cold, but from the erasure, from being treated as something to be avoided rather than someone to be seen. The grocery store manager, a thin man in his 30s named Derek, emerged from the entrance with his usual scowl. This was his third trip out today to deal with Catherine. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the practiced patience of someone repeating a well-worn script, "I've told you already, you can't sit here. You're blocking the entrance and making customers uncomfortable." Catherine looked up at him, her blue eyes still sharp despite everything she'd been through. "I'm not blocking anything," she said quietly. "I'm against the wall, not in anyone's way." "That's not the point," Derek insisted. "This is private property, and we have the right to ask you to leave. If you don't move, I'll have to call the police." A small crowd had begun to gather, some shoppers pausing to watch the confrontation, others slowing their pace as they walked by. Catherine could feel their stares, could sense their judgment. Some faces showed pity, others disgust, and a few held the particular kind of disdain reserved for those society had deemed failures. "I'm just trying to survive," Catherine said, still calm but with an undercurrent of weariness that came from having this same conversation at least once a day, in different locations, with different people. "I'm not hurting anyone." "You're hurting our business," Derek shot back. "Customers don't want to see this when they're trying to shop for organic produce and artisanal cheese." A well-dressed woman in the gathering crowd spoke up, her voice dripping with contempt. "Maybe if you got a job instead of begging, you wouldn't be in this situation." She clutched her designer handbag closer, as if poverty itself might be contagious. Catherine's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. What could she say? That she'd had a job, a career, actually, one that had required 12 years of higher education and had paid her over $500,000 a year? That she'd lost everything not through laziness or addiction, but through a series of catastrophic events that had left her broken and alone. They wouldn't believe her. Or worse, they wouldn't care. Derek pulled out his phone. "Last chance," he said. "Move along, or I'm calling 911. Catherine slowly gathered her belongings, the blanket, the cardboard sign, the small backpack that contained everything she owned in the world. As she stood, her knees cracked audibly, and she had to steady herself against the wall for a moment. The crowd watched, some with satisfaction, others with uncomfortable expressions as if witnessing this made them complicit in something they didn't want to acknowledge. "There, happy?" Catherine said to Derek, shouldering her pack. "I'm moving." But as she turned to leave, a police car pulled up to the curb, lights flashing. Derek had apparently called before giving her that last chance. Two officers stepped out, older white man with a buzz cut and a younger black woman, both wearing the stern expressions of people who dealt with Portland's growing homelessness crisis daily and had grown tired of it. "We got a call about someone trespassing," the male officer, whose name tag read Morrison, said. He looked Catherine up and down with barely concealed disgust. "Let me guess, refusing to move along." "I'm moving now," Catherine said evenly. "There's no need." "We've had multiple complaints about you," Morrison interrupted. "This is the third time this week we've been called about you causing problems in this district." "I haven't caused any problems," Catherine protested. "I'm just trying to exist." The female officer, Officer Jackson, pulled out a tablet. "Name?" "Catherine Wells." "ID?" Catherine hesitated. "I don't have it with me." "Of course you don't," Morrison muttered. He turned to his partner. "Run her anyway. See what comes up." As Jackson worked on the tablet, Morrison stepped closer to Catherine, invading her personal space in a way that was clearly meant to intimidate. "You know what your problem is?" he said, his voice low but carrying enough for the gathered crowd to hear. "You people think you can just set up camp wherever you want, make the rest of us deal with your mess. You ever think about how hard people work to make this neighborhood nice? And then you come along and bring it down." Catherine's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she forced herself to stay calm. Getting angry, showing any kind of aggressive emotion, would only make things worse. She'd learned that the hard way. Officer Jackson looked up from her tablet, her expression shifting from routine boredom to alert interest. "Sir," she said to Morrison, "there's something weird here. The system's showing multiple flags on this name." Morrison frowned and came over to look. His eyes widened slightly. "What the?" The crowd pressed closer, sensing a development in the drama. Derek the manager looked vindicated, as if whatever the police had found confirmed his decision to call them. "Ma'am," Officer Jackson said, her tone changing from dismissive to cautious, "are you Dr. Catherine Wells? The neurosurgeon?" The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crowd fell silent. Derek's smug expression faltered. Even Officer Morrison looked momentarily off balance. Catherine closed her eyes briefly, then opened them and met Jackson's gaze directly. "Yes," she said simply. "I am." "That's impossible," Morrison scoffed, recovering quickly. "You're saying this homeless woman is a brain surgeon?" Catherine corrected quietly. "I was a brain surgeon." Officer Jackson was scrolling through something on her tablet, her eyes growing wider. "According to this, Dr. Wells was reported missing 14 months ago. There's been an active missing persons case. And..." She looked up at Catherine with something approaching awe. "There are over 24 medical awards and recognition letters in the system. You performed emergency surgery on Governor Mitchell's daughter 3 years ago." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People were pulling out their phones, some clearly searching for information, others recording the scene. The woman who had told Catherine to get a job had gone pale and taken several steps back, as if trying to distance herself from her earlier comments. "I don't understand," Derek said, looking genuinely confused now rather than hostile. "How does someone go from being a famous doctor to this?" Catherine took a deep breath. This was the question, wasn't it? The one everyone would want answered. And maybe, after 18 months of silence and shame, it was time to tell it. It started with my daughter, Catherine began, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of pain. Emma. She was 17, a senior in high school, planning to study marine biology. She was the light of my life, smart, funny, kind to everyone she met. We were close, just the two of us after my divorce. I thought I was giving her a good life, nice house, good schools, everything she needed. Catherine paused, the memories flooding back. What I didn't know was that Emma was struggling with depression. Severe depression. She hid it so well. I was a doctor, you'd think I would have seen the signs, but I was always working, always at the hospital. I told myself I was building a future for us, securing our finances, building my career. The truth is, I was just absent. The crowd had grown completely silent now, the hostility replaced with an uncomfortable attention. Even Officer Morrison had lowered his guard, listening. One night, I came home late from a surgery, a successful surgery. I was feeling good, and I found Emma in her room. She'd taken pills. A lot of pills. Catherine's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed forward. I called 911, did everything I could, but she died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. She was just 17 years old. A woman in the crowd gasped. Several others looked away, suddenly finding the ground very interesting. After that, everything fell apart, Catherine continued. I couldn't operate anymore. Every time I held a scalpel, my hands would shake. I'd see Emma's face. I took a leave of absence, but it became clear I couldn't go back. The hospital was understanding, but eventually, they had to let me go. And without my job, without that identity, I didn't know who I was anymore. I started drinking. Not just socially, seriously drinking. I'd wake up and immediately reach for the bottle. It was the only thing that made the pain bearable. My savings ran out faster than you'd think. Between Emma's funeral, my mortgage, and my drinking, the money just evaporated. I lost my house, my car, my medical license. My ex-husband wanted nothing to do with me. My friends from the hospital stopped calling after I missed too many lunch dates, too many attempts to help me. Catherine looked around at the faces watching her, some with tears in their eyes now, others with expressions of dawning shame. And eventually, I ended up here. On the streets. Invisible to everyone who passed me by. The same people I might have operated on once, saved their lives even, now stepping over me like I was trash. Officer Jackson had tears streaming down her face. She wiped them quickly, trying to maintain her professional composure. Dr. Wells, she said softly, there are people looking for you. Your colleagues, former patients, your family. They've been trying to find you. Catherine shook her head. I don't want to be found. I'm not that person anymore. But you are, a voice called out from the crowd. Catherine looked and saw an older man pushing forward, his face familiar but out of context. He was wearing an expensive suit, his gray hair neatly trimmed. Dr. Wells, do you remember me? Robert Chen. You operated on my wife 4 years ago. She had a brain tumor. The other doctor said it was inoperable, that we should just make her comfortable. But you said you could do it, and you did. Marissa is at home right now, playing with our grandchildren. Because of you. Catherine stared at him, the memory slowly surfacing through the fog of her grief and shame. Mr. Chen. I remember. You saved her life, Chen said, his voice thick with emotion. You gave me years I never thought I'd have. And now you're here, and I walked past you earlier today without even recognizing you. He turned to the crowd. We all walked past her. The mood had shifted entirely now. Derek the manager looked like he wanted to sink into the pavement. The woman who told Catherine to get a job had tears running down her carefully made-up face. The crowd that had gathered to watch someone be humiliated was now witnessing something else entirely, a confrontation with their own capacity for cruelty, their own willingness to judge without knowing, to condemn without understanding. Officer Morrison cleared his throat. "Dr. Wells," he said, and for the first time, there was respect in his voice, "we'd like to help you. There are resources, programs for people in your situation. The city has services." "I've tried them all," Catherine said tiredly. "The shelters are full, or dangerous, or both. The programs have waiting lists months long. The rehab centers won't take you without insurance. And without an address, you can't get a job. Without a job, you can't get an address. It's a circle with no way out." "There has to be something," Officer Jackson said desperately. "You're a doctor, for God's sake. We can't just leave you on the street." Robert Chen pulled out his phone. "Give me a minute," he said, stepping away to make a call. As he talked, Catherine looked at the faces around her, faces that had been hostile and judgmental just minutes ago, now filled with pity and shame. She wasn't sure which was worse. The hostility at least was honest. This pity felt like another kind of erasure, a different way of being seen but not truly understood. Chen returned, his face lit with a determined smile. "Dr. Wells, I just spoke with the director of Providence Park Hospital. They've agreed to pay for a 30-day inpatient rehabilitation program, with the possibility of more if needed. And after that, if you're willing, they'd like to talk to you about coming back to medicine, maybe not as a surgeon right away, but teaching, mentoring, consulting. They say the medical field needs your experience and knowledge." Catherine felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she'd built to protect herself from hope, from the possibility of being disappointed again. "Why would they do that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm nothing. I've been nothing for over a year." "You were never nothing," Chen said firmly. "You made a mistake, a very human mistake of putting work before family. And you suffered a tragedy that would have broken anyone. But that doesn't erase who you are, what you've done, what you could still do." Officer Jackson stepped forward. "Dr. Wells, will you let us take you to the hospital? Not under arrest, as transport to help." Catherine looked down at her worn shoes, at the blanket and cardboard sign that had been her only possessions for so long. She looked up at the sky, gray and heavy with rain that would come soon. And then she looked at the faces around her, not with hostility now, but with something she hadn't seen directed at her in months, genuine human concern. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." As Officer Jackson guided Catherine toward the patrol car, the crowd began to disperse, but slowly, reluctantly. Many of them looked shaken, as if their understanding of the world had been fundamentally challenged in the space of 15 minutes. Derek the manager stood frozen, watching, his phone forgotten in his hand. The woman who had told Catherine to get a job approached Officer Morrison hesitantly. "Officer," she said, her voice small and ashamed, is there somewhere I can donate? To help people like her?" Morrison pulled out a card. "There are several organizations working with Portland's homeless population. But the best thing you can do is what you're doing now, seeing them. Really seeing them. Every person on these streets has a story. Most of them didn't choose to be here." Catherine sat in the back of the police car, watching the Pearl District fade as they drove toward the hospital. For the first time in 18 months, she felt something other than despair. It wasn't quite hope, not yet. But it was possibility. The possibility that her story wasn't over, that being broken didn't mean being beyond repair. Officer Jackson caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "Dr. Wells," she said, "thank you for telling your story. I think a lot of people needed to hear it." Catherine nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. The conference room at Providence Park Hospital was packed with people, medical staff, administrators, social workers, and community organizers. At the front of the room, looking remarkably different than she had on that November day in the Pearl District, stood Dr. Catherine Wells. Her hair was clean and neatly cut, still gray but styled now. She wore simple professional clothes, slacks and a blouse, nothing fancy, but appropriate. Her face had filled out slightly with regular meals, and though there were still shadows under her eyes, there was also something else, purpose. "Thank you all for coming," Catherine began, her voice steady and clear. 3 months ago, I was homeless. I was invisible. I was, by most definitions, a failure. But I was also still a doctor, still a person, still valuable. I just couldn't see it anymore, and neither could anyone else. She clicked to advance her presentation, showing statistics on the screen behind her. In Portland, there are approximately 4,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. Across Oregon, that number is over 14,000. But here's what most people don't know: about 25% of homeless individuals have college degrees. Many are veterans. Many are people who, like me, experienced a catastrophic life event and fell through every safety net our society is supposed to provide. Catherine advanced to another slide, this one showing faces, homeless individuals she'd met during her time on the streets. These people aren't failures. They aren't lazy. They're victims of a system that makes it nearly impossible to escape once you fall into it. And the worst part is how we treat them, as invisible at best, as problems to be solved at worst. A hand went up in the audience, a young doctor Catherine recognized from the hospital. "Dr. Wells, what do you think is the solution?" "That's what we're here to discuss," Catherine said. "I'm proposing a program I'm calling the Invisible Ones Initiative. It would bring together medical professionals, social workers, addiction specialists, and community volunteers to provide comprehensive care to Portland's homeless population. Not just emergency services, but ongoing care. Mental health support. Job training. Housing assistance." She clicked to another slide showing a detailed proposal. The program would be funded through a combination of grants, donations, and redirected resources from emergency services, because believe me, it's cheaper to prevent someone from becoming homeless than it is to deal with the consequences after they already are. Another hand went up, an administrator Catherine knew had been skeptical of her reinstatement. "Dr. Wells, with all respect, you're proposing a massive undertaking. Do you really think you're in a position to lead something like this?" Catherine met his gaze directly. "Yes, I do. Because I know what it's like to be on both sides of this issue. I know what it's like to be the doctor who can save lives in an operating room but couldn't save my own daughter. And I know what it's like to be the person everyone walks past without seeing, without caring about. That perspective, that lived experience, is exactly what this initiative needs." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I'm not asking for your pity. I'm asking for your partnership. Because this isn't just about helping homeless people, it's about recognizing our common humanity. It's about understanding that any one of us is just a few bad breaks away from where I was 3 months ago." The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone began to clap, Officer Jackson, who had been invited to the presentation. The applause spread until the entire room was on its feet. After the presentation, as people filed out, many stopped to shake Catherine's hand, to tell her they wanted to be involved. Robert Chin approached with his wife Marissa, who Catherine hadn't seen since her surgery years ago. "Dr. Wells," Marissa said, pulling Catherine into an unexpected hug, "thank you. Not just for saving my life back then, but for doing this now. For turning your pain into purpose." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm just trying to make something good come from something terrible. That's all any of us can do," Marissa said gently. That evening, Catherine returned to her small studio apartment, basic, humble, but hers. She'd been sober for 93 days. She attended AA meetings twice a week and saw a therapist specializing in grief and trauma. The work was hard. There were still days when she wanted nothing more than to drink until she couldn't feel anything. But she didn't. She couldn't bring Emma back. She couldn't undo the 1.5 years she'd spent on the streets. But she could honor her daughter's memory by being the kind of person Emma would have been proud of. By using her privilege and experience to help others who were struggling. Catherine walked to the window of her apartment, looking out at the Portland skyline. Somewhere out there were people sleeping rough tonight, invisible to the thousands of others walking past them. But maybe, with the initiative, some of them wouldn't be invisible for long. Maybe they'd be seen, truly seen, as human beings worthy of dignity and care. She thought of the moment when Officer Jackson had asked her name, when her identity as Dr. Catherine Wells had been revealed to the hostile crowd. She'd hated the pity in their eyes, but she understood now that pity wasn't the enemy, indifference was. The worst thing about being homeless hadn't been the cold or the hunger or even the danger. It had been the erasure, the way people looked through her as if she didn't exist. The eighth story, the story beneath the surface, was often about visibility. About being seen. About recognizing that every person has a story, a history, a complexity that extends far beyond what we can observe in a single moment. Catherine had been given a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild her life that many in her situation never got. She intended to use it not just to heal herself, but to create a system where others might have the same opportunity. As she prepared for bed that night, Catherine looked at the photo on her nightstand, Emma at 16, laughing at something off camera, her whole future ahead of her. "I'm trying, baby," Catherine whispered to the image. "I'm trying to be better." And tomorrow, she would try again. Thank you for watching this powerful story about judgment, redemption, and the importance of seeing people's true worth. When that crowd assumed they knew who Catherine Wells was based on her circumstances, they had no idea she was a brilliant neurosurgeon who had saved countless lives. Her story reminds us that everyone we pass on the street has a history, has value, has the potential for redemption. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the 8th Diary for more tales of resilience and justice. Let's work together to see the invisible ones, to recognize our shared humanity, and to build a world where everyone is given the dignity they deserve.